The concept of just war is kind of interesting because you don't really just have to justify. The concept of justice doesn't apply, say, to this delicious dinner we just ate. Nobody said that was a just dinner or unjust dinner. So justice applies to actions which are killing, which a war is, a mass killing. And obviously, since acts of killing are grave actions, they have to be justified in some way, vindicated or justified. Much of what I call classical international law theory, which was developed by the Catholic scholastics, especially the 16th century Spanish scholastics such as Vittoria and Suarez, and then by the Dutch Protestant scholastics, Grotius, and by 18th and 19th century jurists up until the First World War, much of their literature is developing the criteria of a just war. What is a just war? Well, it's an unjust war. And my own view can be simplified very quickly. In my view, a just war exists when the people tries to ward off a threat of coercion or domination by another people, or to overthrow an already existing domination. That's a just war, from my point of view. A war is unjust, on the other hand, when the people try to impose domination on another people, or try to retain an already existing coercive rule over them. That's a fairly simple, I think, and direct criteria. Now, I admit there is some room for fuzzy interpretation of what constitutes a menace of impending domination that might justify going to war. On one extreme, you can see a guy looking across the street at you, looking cross-eyed, you decide to shoot him because he might be evil, have evil intentions. So you don't want to go that far. So what is the criterion for an impending or threat? My own preference, as always, is for strict construction. In other words, to adopt a famous criterion in another context, in my view, to justify preemptive strike, the impending threat of force must be clear and present. So in other words, guys just about raising his gun to shoot at you, that's a clear and present danger. Anything else, I think, is illegitimate. In my view, almost every war engaged in by the United States of America since its birth has been unjust. And I can't deal with that tonight. In pursuit of the unjust goal of coercive domination over other peoples, or at very best conjuring up alleged threats that have scarcely been either clear or present. I've had a reputation as an anti-war activist because in my own lifetime, my ideological activism has been generally focused in opposition to America's wars. First, because I believe our waging them to be unjust, and secondly, because war, and the famous phrase that I think somebody brought up this weekend, I forget who, of libertarian Randall Bourne, who said war has always been the health of the state. It's the instrument for aggrandizing state power over the health, the lives, the prosperity of their subject citizens and the social institutions. So even a just war can't be entered into lightly, and an unjust war, of course, has to be anathema. Some people have thought I've been a pacifist because I've been opposed to wars, but surely an odd kind of pacifist, for example, who champions the death penalty for violent criminals as well as caning for vandals. So not your common garden variety pacifist. The point is, I think that there are two wars in American history that I think have been unquestionably proper and just. And not only that, the opposing side was clearly unjust and notably unjust. Okay. There's not even any question of it in my mind. These two wars have been where there's been a threat. Well, these two wars, you didn't have to worry about a future threat. In these two wars, in both of these wars, Americans were trying to rid themselves of unwanted domination by another people. You didn't have to worry about does he represent a threat or not. It's right there. And in both cases, the other side ferociously tried to maintain their coercive rule over Americans who wanted to rule themselves. In each case, our side, if you will, one side was notably just, the other side unjust. These two just wars in American history have been the American Revolution and the War for Southern Independence. At this point, I'd like to mention just a few vital features of the treatment of war by classical international lawyers. Not just, one, they dealt with just wars. This is war, just and unjust. The other aspect of what they were dealing with is what are the limitations on war? Should war be unlimited? And even a just war. And the classical international law tradition, which is which ruled from, say, 16th century until 1914, what they were trying to do is this. They said, look, we don't try to abolish war. That's ridiculous, utopian, idiotic. It's not going to happen. What we try to do is, if there are wars, we're trying to limit their scope. Okay? The limitations were twofold. One, don't target civilians. It's a key. Keep civilians out of it. If you want to fight, if a king wants to fight with another king, go out there with a retinue and fight each other. Keep civilians out of it. Number one. And number two, neutrals' rights. Other countries not only are permitted to stand off, if country A and country B are fighting, not only is it permissible for other countries to remain neutral, but it's a good thing. Neutrality was considered great in the old days. It was considered noble and just. And neutrals had rights. And most of international law was working out the details of this. For example, if country A and country B were fighting with each other, country C was trying to trade with either one of them, could not be interfered with. The enemy countries could not interfere with shipping goods to the other side. The only thing they could interfere with was contraband, which was very narrowly defined as arms and ammunition. And that's it. I mean, not just food and medical supply, but anything else, industrial raw material, everything, capital goods, machinery, that has to pass. You could not blockade and keep out neutrals' rights. So this, of course, meant that every country expected to be in one term or another neutral. They wanted to preserve their rights. They didn't want to be international pariahs for the rest of the centuries. And so more or less these principles are observed, at least during the 19th century. And they're observed more and more over time. This was considered the laws of civilized warfare, limiting warfare. Don't target civilians and keep neutrals out of it. Allow neutrals to proceed. So in the old days, for example, as I say, neutrality was considered not just justifiable, but a positive virtue. In the old days, he kept us out of war. It was a high tribute to a president or any political leader. But now, of course, all the pundits and professors condemn any president who, quote, stands idly by, unquote, while, quote, people are being killed, unquote, in Bosnia, Somalia, Rwanda, you fill in the blanks, any place in the world. In the old days, standing idly by was considered an act of high statesmanship. And as I say, neutrals had rights. You couldn't interfere with neutrals. So, in modern international law, we have a very different situation, starting with Woodrow Wilson, the evil Woodrow Wilson, continuing on since. Both of these, by the way, criteria, both of these modern law criteria developed by Wilson. And one of them is that the so-called collective security against aggression. You figure out, there's countries fighting each other all the time. There's wars all the time. Let's say the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda and Burundi. It's a good laboratory case. First you figure out who the aggressor is. Who the hell knows? I mean, they could both be aggressors, right? No. You got to figure out who the good guy is and who the bad guy is. There always has to be only one bad guy. Because if both guys are bad, you're not going to get the whole world to march in and shoot somebody. Okay? There has to be one clear aggressor and the other clear victims, and then the whole world's supposed to leap in and crush the aggressor. The model of this is the cop on the corner. This is the famous idea of the international police force. The League of Nations, the UN, the US, NATO, whatever other collective security, whatever alphabet arrangement they've got. So the idea is if a war breaks out somewhere, first you find who the bad guys are. How the hell do you know? They say that they're thousands of miles away from the action. Who knows? You get some CNN TV camera coming in, you shoot somebody in action, you figure out who the bad guys are, and then you come in and zap them, bomb them, crush them, send troops in, and all that. It's all very soul-satisfying, conceptually easy. There are, however, certain problems with this. In the first place, what's aggression? I mean, the cop on the corner, if you see somebody mugging somebody else, it's pretty clear who the aggressor is. The cop comes in and zaps the mugger. Okay, it's simple. And international relations is not that easy. Who knows what the just boundary is? Who knows whether the Rwanda-Burundi border should be this way through some lake or the north of some lake or whatever? It's not that clear. Also, the boundary shifts a lot through history. So the boundary now could be very different from the boundary 10 years from now. Which is the just boundary? Who knows? Who cares? Why should everybody get involved in this? So the whole idea of the classical international law is to limit warfare, keep everybody out, limit civilians, and limit the other people. So the rest of the world could go about its business, and the wars would be, you can't abolish war, but you can at least confine it to small areas.